Today's topic is jobs in India. This is the first presentation, panel discussion, Vidped that we have with an invited speaker. So it's a little bit experimental. Bear with us as we find our way through it. The invited speaker is TCA Srinivasa Raghavan, a friend of mine from college days, a journalist in India who knows quite a bit about economics. He writes for leading economic newspapers and so on. And we have 4 invited discussants who will talk about it after he has spoken. So over to you, TCA.
Thanks, Subodh. This is wonderful to be speaking to young people. At our age, we don't get much of a chance to do that. So thank you once again. You had asked me to speak about employment, job, that sort of thing. And quite honestly, where India is concerned, the prospects are very bleak. And the reason for that is that our workforce, as defined by people who are willing to work and looking for jobs, etc., is around 700 million out of 1,400 million. So 50%, 55% of the people are just with Mike. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Can you all hear me?
there's a little bit of echo, and so you can adjust.
It's because the fan is on. Let me turn it off.
Okay.
Yeah. So the jobs thing is very scary. Even if we manage to get, say, formal sector employment in manufacturing and services, such as they are defined, it's going to be impossible to give employment to more than about 100 million people, 100, 120 at best, over a very long period of time. And if we were to do that, or say if China were to do that, then there will be no jobs left anywhere else in the world. Even if you get up to the sort of peak trading that was happening before the, the pandemic hit. So we are talking of people who will not have jobs to the tune of 400, 500 million people spread over the country. Now this is really, really scary because what it means is that for the foreseeable future, for a very long time, we are going to remain a welfare state where there are huge fiscal transfers to those who cannot support themselves. But we'll come to that later. The classical economic thing about structural and cyclical employment, unemployment. In India, structural employment is very, very, very high. Nobody knows how high it is. It's because of a variety of reasons, but essentially, the skills that are required to be paid to do something, those are either completely lacking or they are, what's the word, inadequate in terms of your skill level. To call a plumber, for example, at that level, he doesn't know how to do his job properly. Most of them don't. It's all like Sunaina, and they learn on the job. There's no proper training. Various governments in India have tried these skilling initiatives. But, in a year they'll train 10,000 people and it just simply doesn't match the demand for proper skills. So that's one problem at that level. The other thing is as you go up the ladder of skills, the speed at which technology is moving, say in manufacturing, mm, our guys, most of them who come out of engineering colleges or even in medicine, people who come out of medical colleges, they don't, they are not au fait with the latest developments in their field. So what happens? They learn on the job. But that's a very, very, very small number compared to the 700 million years. So a lot of it is structural, some of it is cyclical, very small amounts of cyclical, but basically we are faced with this gigantic structural employment. Now, what do we do to solve it? In the in the sense that you give people, allow people, whatever the term you want to use, enable people, I think that's the correct word, to earn a livelihood. So India has to, from a policy point of view, it has to start, uh, the language has to change. It cannot be jobs anymore. It has to be work. And the distinction is very important because a job implies two or three things. One is that you get paid at the end of every month or every week or fortnight or whatever the cycle is on a regular basis. So that has an income smoothing effect. If at the end of every month, you know, or week, you know that you're going to get so much. So the income stream is smoothing. That's one. The other thing is that in a job, you are paid even when you're not being productive. Uh, you can take 30 days off or whatever it is. Variety of ways in which you're paid for downtime. In work, it's not like that. And I speak about this with considerable experience because in 1997, I chose work over employment because I felt going to the office and hanging around there, effectively, if I was there for 8 or 10 hours, effectively I was working for maybe 3 hours. The rest of the time I was gossiping, going here, going there, or just sitting on my desk pretending to work, etc. So I told myself, this is ridiculous. I can earn more money by converting the time that I'm not doing anything in the office to doing something at home. So I'm actually a pioneer of work from home in the sense that I gave up a job and became what in India is called a consultant, a Form 16A worker, one man firm. The So what I was doing was work. And people used to ask me, where are you employed? And I would say, I'm not employed anywhere. And they would look very askance and say, what do you mean? And I say, look, I work. And I'm exactly like a lawyer. And I'm exactly like a doctor. I'm exactly like an architect. I'm self-employed. And, in those days, the idea of self-employment had really not caught on. Basically, people said, you have to have a job because you have to have a very smooth income stream. So we have to now move away from looking at jobs and looking at work because that allows a person to earn as much as he wants. He can work 20 hours a day for 6 months in a year and not at all for the remaining. He can smoothen the work stream rather than the income stream. That's what I'm saying. But that brings in its way its own problems, which are peculiar to the individual. He has to plan his finances in a particular way, etc. He has no way of there's no pension, for example, which means that the government has to provide wage bonds, basically, which allow you to convert a portion of your current stream of income into a future stream of income through appropriate saving. It's not just a question of putting it in a bank. And so the taxation levels being what they are in India, uh, if you put it in a fixed deposit, saying that I'm transferring a portion of my current income into a future stream of income. Inflation and taxation will take away nearly 70% over a period of time. So that's not really good enough. I used to argue with the finance ministry here, and I'm still arguing with them to no avail, saying that we have to provide for specialized bonds for people to be able to do this, retirement benefits. I think in America you have the peculiar instruments. We don't have them. So that's one more thing. Uh, One consequence of this, which I don't think people in India have studied this, it has a very large macroeconomic consequence, which is that your informal sector, as we define it, is much, much, much bigger than the formal sector. So today, for example, if you look at, I mean, you take GDP as a surrogate, and you get some 20% or whatever it is from agriculture and some 17, 18% from manufacturing. Where is the rest coming from? And it's all in a residual kind of thing of services. What services? You don't know. Now, we've got this enormous informal sector, which includes the formal services sector. So that's another peculiarity in India. So the person who comes to clean your, jhadu pocha, washing your clothes, ironing your clothes, whatever it is, your driver, anybody earning below the tax threshold, who is not filing an income tax return, is basically in the informal sector. So this sector is very large, about which the government has no idea, and therefore the macroeconomic consequences via the fiscal thing is huge. A lot of these guys are in agriculture, which is not taxed. So what I was like I was saying that the given the size of the workforce, given the size of the informal sector, given the need to have huge transfers, welfare transfers, income support to people who don't have jobs and who in fact don't even have work. How can so many people have work even on a daily basis? Construction laborers, for example, work 10 days, 12 days, 14 days if they're lucky in a month. So income transfer, but from whom? So these income transfers will only have to come from the people that we know about, which is the formal sector, and those earning about say 7, 8, 8, 9 lakhs, 10 lakhs a year, something like that. So the problem here is going to be in the future, it already is there, that the absence of employment growth, the rapid employment growth, because of whatever reason, skills, education, blah, blah, whatever it is, this is going to hold us down very, very bad. It comes in the way of a whole lot of things, including politics, because the more unemployed people you have, the more, what's the word? Your monetary policy gets affected because of inflation. Your employment policies geared towards unproductive, what they call in India, bhakti karna in the government. Guys doing absolutely nothing, activity is zero, and so on. So the structures keep getting distorted. And on top of it, you have all these problems of, technology, robots and artificial intelligence and various things. Fortunately, India has very high, almost nearly perfect, or perfect in fact, labor mobility. So, in spite of language difficulties and so on and so forth, people do move around looking for work, if not jobs. I was last week. I was in Hyderabad for a few days, and my sister who lives there was saying that it's impossible to get local labor. That is the Telangana fellows. And practically the entire informal sector there is now manned by areas and Biharis and people from the northeast and so on. So that's a very good thing, very high labor mobility. But because of the politics that I mentioned, uh, there is a tendency to, it happened in Bangalore about 10 years ago, this whole rumors about these northeastern fellows coming and taking away our jobs, etc. The Trump kind of thing, you shouldn't take away our job, the sons of the soil organic. So that is going to begin to happen. So that's going to affect labor mobility and that's going to create its own set of problems. Finally, uh, this is something which in many parts of India, it's really true and nobody thinks about it, that the opportunity cost of education in going to a school, for example, is very, very high. I had written a paper on this about 20 years ago that in Bihar, school, and okay, just let me interrupt myself there. The correct thing that we should be looking at, I had written in the paper, is the dropout rate and not the enrollment rate. And somewhere somebody might have picked it up and say they now look at the dropout rate also. In Bihar, the dropout rate was very high, and when I tried to look for reasons, there was a very strong correlation between the increase in the dropout rate and the gradual deindustrialization of Bihar. So you go to a school and you spend a whole day there and you come out at the end of, 5 years of schooling or 8 years of schooling, and what do you do after that? There are no jobs. So what did people start doing? They said, start doing this. Start saying, school jaake fayda kya hai? I may as well, sit at home or do some work with low equilibrium, very, very low level work. So as long as I know how to read and write after primary school, that's enough. So if you don't create the incentives to educate yourself, you don't educate yourselves. And if you don't educate yourself, you don't get jobs. And then the whole cycle becomes a vicious kind of thing, which is, by the way, exactly what has happened in Bihar and Eastern UP and so on. We tend to get very thrilled with the idea of, uniformed girls and boys going to school. But how many is that? I mean, Nitish Kumar tried this stuff with, doing bicycles to girls so that they could go to school. These are all stunts. They don't solve the basic structural problem. We are very thrilled with the idea of IT and so on and so forth. But what percentage? And lastly, there is, in the last 10 years, you will read reports that employment has gone up. I sent you something on that, some reports by Argentine University. What it doesn't say is that even for IT professionals, where you think a certain fairly high level of skill, in the last 10 years, their incomes have remained stagnant. So this is the problem of an oversupply of labor. And they are now hiring, IT companies are now hiring people at as little as 30,000 rupees a month, which is, by the way, what a senior driver would get if he had been there around. For my driver, we pay him 15,000, but that's because he drives only twice a week or thrice a week. But most people here who employ drivers are paying between 25 and 30,000 rupees a month. So why would a guy become a IT, guy going to Bangalore? You sit at home, gaadi chala, Uber driver ban jao. So there is a very strong bias towards low level jobs. And I have absolutely no idea how we're going to sort out this problem because the sheer number of people who, this IAS exam which we all used to take diligently when we came out of college because there was nothing else, no other job. Those days, maybe 15, 17,000 people, I'm talking about 1973, 15, 20,000 people would take that. Today, I think over 1 million take that. And how many people does the government recruit in a year? All services put together, maybe 1,200, maybe 1,000. You know, state government, they also have the same problem. First of all, they don't recruit. But when they recruit at the level of fumes and khalasis and whatnot. They don't have money for anything else. And these are unproductive workers. All of them have to be paid pensions. So we are screwed. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. So I'm sorry to sound so pessimistic. Hamara time to ho gaya. You guys are going to have to face this problem. One lucky thing about it is that, of course, you'll have low, your wages that you pay to your employees will be very low. So you can enjoy a decent standard of living because you have been educated and acquired some skills. But the social fallout of this, because of increasing aspirations also. Guy watches a TV, he wants a 56-inch TV, or he wants a mobile phone, which is better than what he already has. So I'll stop there and apologize once again for sounding a depressing note.
No, I think we need to hear a pessimistic view because there's a lot of hype. We are the fastest growing economy in the world, which we are, and we have sent a device to the side of moon that no other country has sent, which is true. And so we do have lots of positive stuff, but once it is important to hear the negative side too. Let me not talk. We have designated young people. They will introduce themselves. The order is already given out to them. So let's get started, folks. We are running a bit late, so let's get started.
Before you start, Subodh, do you remember that song from the movie in 71, Mere Apne, in which Shatrughan Sinha sings? I mean, all of them are there. They all sing this song. They're looking for jobs. BA kiya, MA kiya, jo kuch kiya, MA kiya. And that's 50 years later, it's still the problem.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, let's get the young people a chance. I don't want to talk. Let's start. Okay, let's start, people.
Yeah.
Okay, who's first?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Raghavan. It was really insightful to hear from you. And
just introduce yourself a bit so that we know who it is.
Yeah, sure. So, myself, Samarth Khurana, and I'm currently working as an associate at Deloitte USI. I work with the model risk management team and the product management team. So coming to the issue, I mean, I do agree with most of the points that you mentioned, Raghavan. And recent data also suggests that the situation is not, very in our favor. For instance, most of the recent figure indicate a very subdued rate of, growth, that is 4.4%. We have also seen private investments have gone down. Credit uptake has also been slowed a little bit. You mentioned that there have been talks that employment rates have been rising, but in fact, one of the best measure of job opportunities, that is India's workers to population ratio, has considerably declined from about 44% in 2016 to 37% today. So I mean, all those things are quite alarming. But I do see a silver lining in this whole process, given the China's inward-looking policies that has kind of opened the door for international companies to look elsewhere for cheap labor. I mean, you mentioned in your talk as well, one of the selling point for our country is that we can cheap labor and can manufacture easily. I mean, that's the sector that we haven't been successful for quite some time. But I do expect, this inward-looking policy by China, and if this phenomenon kicked in, and hopefully we Indians can take benefit from that and take the same growth path as East Asian countries took, and basically get our manufacturing employment up. Yeah, so that's my view on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Samarth. Who's next?
I am next. So I'm Parama Kundu. I am currently working at Nielsen as an associate in the market mix modeling sector. I also believe what Samarth has said. Like in 75 years of independence, India surely has made a great stride towards development. But like Sir says, good is not good enough. It is there's a long road ahead, and it is now imperative to work towards a society that is not only prosperous but equitable. And for that, we definitely need good, well-paying jobs. Obviously, the economy of India has made a progress in 1980, but the proportion of regular wage workers or salaried workers has risen. But the I would not say that the growth is significant enough in context of creation of new opportunities. We are not yet there where we want to be, and especially the manufacturing sector has not got a real boost, and as a result the connection between growth and good jobs is still very weak. And India is overtaking China to become the world's most populous nation with more than 1.4 billion people, and it is a young nation. More than 50% of the population is still under 30. But with no jobs, lot of young minds are remaining jobless even after graduation. On the other hand, there is a section of the population who is moving out of India in search for better paying jobs or to obtain, superior higher education. My question is, why can't we get that in our own country? There are so many good institutions and public universities, but why is there still a gap between the skill set requirements of the firms and the skill set possessed by the students? Reform in education system is definitely a need of the hour, and otherwise it would be very difficult to curb the brain drain that is happening in India right now. A lot of emigration of highly skilled qualified people is happening, and historically it has not proven to be great for the developing countries. It is necessary that we are able enough to retain our top talent and skilled workers to maintain a competitive edge against the accelerating globalization. So creating more jobs remains crucial for the country to maintain the momentum.
Okay, thank you, Parama. Who's next?
I am next. So thank you, sir, first of all, for having me here now. And I am Akash, a third-year undergrad student at the University of Calcutta, and I'm aspiring to be an academician in the future. So I agree to broadly to what sir said, and in the last few sentences, sir said that we need to be pessimistic, and sir kind of apologized for being overly pessimistic. But I agree with sir very much here that we do need to be pessimistic. We do need to be critical, especially in the time of social media. Like say, for example, whenever we are just taking up the phone and in the news feed is coming that India has done this, India has done that, this big thing, these big feats, but we are not going into the details. Like, for example, I'm telling you, a few days back, there was one particular data which I read that was written that between 2004 and 2017, of the 35 million people came into the regular workforce from the informal and the agricultural. And in that workforce, 26 million were women and 9 million were men. So that's kind of quite a good data that we are having more of a gender equity. But there are still various gaps in this. Like, why is this coming? Like, why so much of women? And there are reasons like, say that older women who are going out of the workforce, and then they were least educated compared to the newer women, and that's actually good that we are having more women and they are more educated. But there are some other features also, that this number is so broad, and the gender pay gap, the stagnant wage rate. That is the wage rate even rising, or is just like they are forming a menial form of a less paid workforce? And while talking about this gender issue, the problem in the employment of the gender issue is merely the demand and supply side. And when we're talking about the demand side, the main norms are the main norms are the beliefs regarding the appropriate types of work, which can be the hiring preferences of the employers, and therefore, some employer might want more women, some might not. And even if it's not a direct employer discrimination, we can have previous period segregation. Like in the previous period in my company, most of them were men. So in the next period also, most of them will be men. So we have to fix these issues. And also there is the problem of the man breadwinner, that in most of the families, the men will be the main breadwinner. So that's actually causing an issue on, like, if in the family man is the main breadwinner, then the main problem is that what we are seeing right now in India is the jobless growth. Like, we are seeing growth, but jobs are not rising at that same rate. Like, jobs are somewhat remaining stagnant or rising at a decreasing rate compared to the growth in the GDP. So in this scenario, and what we are seeing is that women are only coming into the workforce only if there are already the number of men in the workforce is fixed. Like, they have already reached that level, and then now we will go for the women. And that's actually kind of a problem. And even in the demand side, supply side, we are having norms like the household work, that the women should be doing the household work, not the men. We are having restrictions in various sectors. Like, there is a motherhood penalty also, what we can call the motherhood penalty. There is that restriction in the women workforce, and the main decision-making power in the workforce still remains with the men. And these are coming, and these are kind of restrictions which we are seeing, and we have to overcome this. If we want to have a more equitable society, more employment from all the sectors, we need to have women and men both, and not just about women. And this problem persists in the caste system also. Like, as we have seen in the data of which Sir has given us, Vidped University's data, as per the data, we have seen that for other castes, majorly the general caste, not the SC or ST or other caste, percentage of people in casual wage has fallen significantly and now stands at around 13% in 2021, and while for SC it is around 40%. So it has fallen, it has reduced. It was much more higher, of course, but the problem is that it's 13% for general and still 40% for the SC, ST, for SC. So it actually shows that there's still a huge gap. 13% and 40% is not a very small number, and it's not that this has been the case in terms of growth also. For the sorry, I won't say growth, in the new job creation. Like, we can see that from the data that in 2004, over 80% of sons of casual workers wage were associating themselves in the casual works. It was same for both general and for SC. General means others here, and for SC also. But what we can see in 2018 data, that for the general category, this number has fallen to 53%. From 80% to 53%, whereas for the SC category, it has still remained at around 75.6%, which is an alarming rate. That, like, it was 80% and it has only fallen by 4%. While for the general category, we have seen it has fallen a much more rate. And one particular reason for this is which Sir also mentioned, that this adapting to the structural change. But we have seen that usually what India has been a country, or not only India, also other caste discrimination, other nations also, that the upward caste or the majority are always more, they can adapt in a better way to the new structural changes, learning new technologies and other stuff. So that might be one reason, but we have to, see this and sort this out. And not just caste or gender. Another problem in India here has been the religion issue. And if we see the data, mostly in the past, traditionally, the Hindus have been more dominating in the agricultural sectors, whereas the Muslims have been seeing, most of the Muslims have been dominating the retail sector or the manufacturing sector. But one particular is the modern service sector. Now, I would like to point out data here also. In 2014, 10% of total Hindu employment was included in the modern service sector, and it was roughly 9 to 10% for the Muslim also in 2004. But now in standing in 2021, this number for the Hindu household has been 15%. So earlier, out of 110 Hindu men and women were likely to be in the modern service sector, and now it's 15. So it has risen by 50%. So it's a very good gap and good rise, good jump. And we will be hoping that this happens for all the sectors also, all the classes also in the future. But for the Muslim sector, this number is still less than 11%. So it was around 10%, and now it's even less than 11%. So it's less than 10% growth. So you can see that for the majority, it has been around 50% growth, while for the minority, it has only been around 10% growth. So there is this kind of segregation here also. So I would like to ask this question to Sir also, that how Sir thinks that we can put forward more social inclusion in our policy. If suppose we are the government, we are to design the policies, then how can we put in more social inclusions, bringing in bringing out the gender pay gap between the men and the women, bringing in more SC, ST and other castes into the main sectors, and also the religion based also. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Akash. Sunaina, I believe you want to close it out. Let's go.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Subodh, sir, first of all, for offering this opportunity. A very warm greetings to all the panelists and Raghavan, sir. I am Sunaina, currently a master's student, and I'm pursuing master's in economics with specialization in environment and resource economics from Delhi School of Advanced Studies. And I am a research enthusiast, and I was looking forward to this discussion because I will be a participant of the job market very soon as I finish my master's. So it's important for me to learn more about this and share my thoughts. I will be adding on to Raghavan sir's points, and there may be a few puzzles that will come with his points in the discussion. So, sir had already highlighted the importance of self-employment as well as the limitations for it. I will be focusing on the problem of rise in female labor force participation, but with only an increase in the self-employment. So, while I was looking at the World Bank data, I found that the labor force participation from early 2000s till 2018 have followed a downward trend. So it has decreased significantly, and then we saw a substantial rise in 2019, and that was according to the report of Azim Premji University. It was mentioned that it was due to the rise in self-employment. And the employment statistics report, which was published in April 2023 by Ministry of Labor, it actually acknowledges that female labor force participation has been low over the years, and they gave the reasons such as childcare and personal commitments in homemaking, wanting to continue their studies, or health or age-related concerns. I will be focusing on the 2 points, that is childcare commitments and wanting to study further. So as Sir made a point that we need to be more educated and invest more in education in order to secure more jobs and better jobs. So, however, it is not the case with the women in India. In India, the women are more educated than men, according to the higher education survey, and most of them are doing a master's, and most of them are pursuing a postgraduate degree than the men. But still, they are not in the job market. They are dropping out, and the female labor force participation is less. So this is another puzzle that comes. So I was reviewing the articles on this, and I found a very interesting concept. It's the greedy jobs. So this means, like in simple terms, that the more you work, the longer hours you invest in your work, the more you get paid. So ever since the early 2000s, there has been a shift in the intensity of the work required. So the work has now become more capital intensive, and with the use of machinery, computers, and software. So the demand for labor is not that much as it used to be. So as a result, there is excess supply in the market, and the competition is more. So in order to cut through this competition, the greedy jobs concepts come into existence, that the longer that person is working, the better he'll be getting a job, and better pay that he'll be getting. So the jobs in India have become more greedy in nature as the years have progressed. So you need to work for longer hours, and you need to invest more time in your offices and stuff. So this is a constraint for the Indian women, especially because cultural opinion also is the same, that women need to invest in the household as well as their their workplaces. So there is very less flexibility if you are a hired worker. And if a woman is working as a self-employed worker, she is more flexible. She can do a part-time, and she can manage her house responsibilities and her work responsibilities. So even though the female labor force participation has risen, but the reason is this, that they are expected to invest more time at their house, like child responsibilities and the homemaking responsibilities and activities. And this is a very distress-led rise. That's why it's the distress-led rise in the self-employment. So ever since the COVID-19 pandemic, also more women are demanding work from home jobs. So they are not flexible with the, like, I saw one of the reports, I'm forgetting which report, but it said that one of the big four, the women in the big fours are resigning as they are told to shift to the physical office, like for the physical work, and they are more comfortable with work from home. So that is because they are adjusted to the lifestyle, and that like you can manage your house responsibilities also. So, and as more self-employed women are increasing, the number of women are increasing, the earnings are falling, and there is lack of, as I mentioned, lack of employee benefits like pensions and all. They don't get it. So the real earnings are fairly less as compared to the other hired workers. And there is lack of finance for small businesses. I've seen a lot of small businesses come into existence after COVID-19 pandemic, but there is a very low attention and low funding to their businesses. So I would just like to ask Sir about what sort of policy implications can he recommend about solving this issue for the women, especially because my discussion was more gender-based, and as the self-employment issue is there, it is more vulnerable for the women. So how Sir feels the policy implications should be to cure and improve this issue?
Okay, let me come in to say that we are actually running out of time. But the next section, I am the speaker, so it's okay. We can, the people from the next session may join, but that's okay. We can let it run because now we can't stop at this point. There are too many critical issues that have been raised. If it was another external speaker, it would be difficult. But since I am the speaker, it's okay. We can take 10 minutes more from the next session and we can start that later. If they join and listen, that's fine. They are young people like you. So there's no harm in it. So, okay, let me not comment on it except to say one thing, that it's been a very good session. I'm happy with it. And just let me say one more thing, that I am actually trying in my very small way to create jobs. And that will be the next session and next two sessions. I'm going to record my own effort at what we call as Lift Up India. And you can see the video tomorrow to see what I'm trying to do to solve the problem. But let me not talk about it here. Let me turn it back to TCA to give his response and to answer the questions. Over to you.
Parama, you asked about, I think what you were asking was, why aren't we able to retain our educated people, as they're running off here and there? There used to be a thing in economics called the Stolper-Samuelson theorem. And it basically talked about factor price equalization if factor movements was free across borders. What has happened is that because factor labor movement is not free, it's created these kind of islands where, like the US or Europe and so on, you don't find people running off to Russia or China or Africa. They're only going to some pockets.
Right.
Essentially, you get more money. You get you do the same amount of work and you get more money if you are able to sell your services to Western Europe in the Western Hemisphere. In fact, people even don't go to South America. It's a very small sort of area where they go. Unless we ban outward migration, this is not a solvable problem. What do? You force people not to go abroad? So that's not going to happen. What we have to do is to make living in India more comfortable. People don't go off just for the money, but our cities are so horrible that, we have problems. People would prefer to have a nice, calm life, where everything is organized and not uncertain like in Indian cities. Like Akash was saying, results don't come out in time and
Right.
stuff like that, small things. Akash, your question, I really have no answers. The only answer is a huge expansion in employment opportunities so that all these other things, religion, gender, caste, and all these things become irrelevant. You just need a person. You don't want to know what his caste is, what his religion is. You need the employer needs a person so badly that he just takes him. So it comes back actually to the need to expand employment opportunities. Samarth, China. Yes, you're right. And I hope it happens, but you have to keep in mind scale. And the Chinese are able to achieve scales which I simply, for the life of me, cannot see India achieving without very, very strong economic reform over the next 10, 15 years. Because don't forget, if you want to set up an industry, you need the cooperation of the state government. The central government can't do very much. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is we have three, again, structural problems. The cost of capital is very high. The cost of land is very high. If you want to set up a greenfield thing, you have to pay 4 times the market price, and nobody knows what the market price is. So the cost of land is very high. And of course, because of a variety of political and equity reasons, etc., we have a very inflexible labor market. So the cost of labor is very high. So land, labor, capital, all three are very expensive in India, which makes it very difficult. This is quite apart from all the bureaucratic corruption, etc., that goes on. It makes it very difficult for people to set up industries over here. So that's the reason why when the flight of industries from China began, all this went basically to Vietnam and Bangladesh. Because if you study their laws, they're simply not as restrictive as ours are. So I hope you're right. I hope in the next 10 years we're able to fix these problems. But I'm very pessimistic because the politics in India is very vicious and it doesn't allow anybody. You remember that Soot Boot Ki Sarkar, the moment the Modi government took over, that jibe made him stop reform for the next 5 years. Sunaina, about women's participation, I'm all for it because I think women do a far better job of everything than men do. Because it's just, I think, hardwired in women to do a better job. But how are we going to increase this? And does it matter? Frankly, from an economic point of view, your gender doesn't matter as far as the workforce is concerned. It's as big as you can imagine. So whether it's a man being given a job or a woman being given a job, it really doesn't matter from the macro point of view. Mm-hmm. The thing that don't knock work from home. Work from home is far more productive, what you would call the marginal revenue productivity of labor or whatever it is. Work from home is far more productive than going to office and producing the same amount of work. Unless, of course, you're working on a machine or something which you can't install in your home. I would think that a gradual shift will take place in India where some of these professions which, like medicine, architecture, lawyers, publishing, all of these things will get more and more women doing that work because the returns are much higher than in simply going to an office and sitting there and doing something which really doesn't matter. So let me conclude by saying what is really, really important for all of you, your kids, really. What is important for you is to think in terms of income from work rather than income from jobs. When you get income from work, it depends on how much you work. When you get income from a job, it depends on how much your organization thinks you're worth. And I think if you can link your income to the amount you work, you'll be much happier. So on that note, let me stop.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, TCA. Let me just conclude by saying that
Thank
it's
you,
been
sir.
a very, very useful and productive discussion. There is too much hype in India about, as I was saying, how great we are, and we are. And if you say that nothing has happened since 1947, that's obviously dead wrong. You have no idea what TCA and I grew up in. We couldn't even have a pen to write our exams that didn't leak. So we know, we have seen the growth ourselves. Once when the college was shut, I took a train back from Delhi to Jaipur. The first train that was available, I stood for 8 hours because the train was so slow, stopping everywhere. So we've lived through life in the 60s, 50s, 60s. So we know what progress India has made. The very fact that we are talking to you on video is something that in our whole college, there used to be one telephone and it never worked. So, we have seen things. Yeah, we have seen life as it used to be, and we are seeing life now. But what it is that we want to be well off and prosperous by 2047, and we are not on that path. Because prosperous means everybody has to be well off, and we are not on that path. And that is where the correction is needed, changes are needed, and the discussion has to move to that rather than to say we have put something on the moon and that we are the fastest growing GDP. That's all welcome. And we are basically living off the efforts of the people who created ISRO, who created IITs, who created IIMs, who created the Delhi School of Economics in 1952, where some of you are at TERI, which was created by people who were educated long ago. We have got to stop living off the efforts of the past, and for your generation to create something that will bear fruit in 10, 15 years, not to simply say, Terry was there quite some time ago, ISRO 60s and so on. We can't just live off the, we didn't get economic growth, but we laid the foundations. Today, we got to build that house. The foundations are there, but we got to build it, and we aren't really doing a great job. But we see people like you, full of energy, full of optimism, and willing to put in the time and effort. I've seen hundreds of those now in the recent times. So I'm as pessimistic as TCA about the current state, but I'm optimistic about the future. Okay, let's end it here today, folks. And
just one, since they're all students of economics, just one final puzzle for you to solve.
Yeah.
If we are the fastest, now we claim to be the fastest growing economy in the world, why is our exchange rate depreciating so fast?
Why is the exchange rate depreciating even though we are the fastest growing economy in the world? Yeah. Okay, good. That's a good question for a term paper, but I'm not running exams here.
So let them think about it.
Right, so think about it. And anyway, we hope to have some of you back in another session. Let's end this one here. Thank you all.
Sure,
it was a great time we had.
Thank you.
We learned a lot.
Thank you,
okay.
sir. Thank
bye
you
bye.
so much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.